What's good, everyone? Welcome back to the Wrk To Create podcast. I'm your host, Colton Bacher, and this is Season 1, Episode 6. Today's episode is all about the looming question every music industry creative has but won't say out loud. Are traditional recap videos officially dead? These cinematic, mind-boggling assets were what every artist and brand wanted just a few years ago. But the reality is, social media has changed, and those traditional recap videos don't hit the way they used to. But why is this, and how do we adapt? All this and more coming up. Let's get into it.
I done came up, went through the ups and downs, but I stayed tough. Never took a shortcut and never gave up. This time around, I'ma stay up.
All right, super quick before we get into this episode, I did want to mention that a lot of the information and the examples that are provided are from conversations that I had with two really good friends, one of those being Greg Korn from Respective Collective, and the other, Joe Larkin, aka J Lark from Curza. Two people that I respect a ton, and their information and the insight that they shared in these conversations was extremely helpful in developing this episode. So just wanted to give credit where credit is due, and let's do it. Hello. Quick little life update. I'm officially off my bender, or done with my bender, kind of. Like all of these weekends in a row of not being home. I have one weekend at home, but coincidentally, my wife is going to be gone on vacation with her mom for Mother's Day, so I have the house to myself, which isn't the worst thing. But also been getting into Warzone again, but been getting absolutely dunked on. So we're just gonna keep moving. My wrists, hands, and elbows are finally feeling better. In a previous episode, I talked about having a really bad tendonitis and pain in my hands and wrists. And that I told you guys as well that I was switching to a Magic touchpad and a Tourbox, like editing console. And holy cow, what a crazy combination. I've had to put it through the ringer now with 3 weekends back to back. 2 of those being just like getting content out live as it's happening, so everything has to be really fast. And yeah, it's been pretty wild to kind of fine tune that workflow, and thankfully we're taking pressure off my hands and wrists and elbows, and it's amazing. So I'm super stoked to just kind of keep developing my systems with that and all the button combinations, all that stuff. But let's get into the episode, guys. A lot of you have probably noticed. Well, first off, I know that this episode is going to hit pretty close to home. I know a lot of us who work in the music industry and the videographers that are shooting at the clubs or on tour with their artists. We love our recap videos, man. We do. It's tour recaps, show recaps, festival recaps, daily recaps, whatever it is. We love our recaps. So I understand that talking about this topic might be a little bit triggering, but we cannot ignore the big shift in social media. And yeah, it's just important to talk about, and I'm super stoked to dive in here and hopefully provide you guys some value on how maybe recaps can be used in today's social media landscape. All right, so if you've been wondering why your super polished video isn't performing, this is why. Unless you've been living under a rock, you've seen the shift. Social media is being consumed drastically differently than it has been in the past. Okay, with the rise of TikTok and Reels, viewers are more sensitive to what they decide is worth watching. This has a lot to do with how many brands and companies have attempted to disguise ads as something that is not an ad. And this usually frustrates the viewers and makes them feel like they are tricked. Similar to the clickbait era on YouTube that was just rampant for, a lot of the mid 2010s and stuff. Like, so our filter for sifting through the bullshit becomes better and better. And the rise of TikTok and Reels has, kind of adapted to our ability to sift through content. So today's viewers understand that highly produced videos are capable of stretching the truth and don't always show a realistic representation of what actually happened. So as a result, viewers now heavily favor less produced content because they feel that they can decipher authenticity versus inauthenticity. So what is real and what is not? Before this change, traditional recaps were all that artists and brands wanted because of the wow factor. So viewers were dying to see how crazy the event was and see what was visually possible at the time. But things are changing now. Things have changed. The result? Viewers now crave authenticity. They gravitate towards real, less produced content. Oof. Pretty wild. And I feel like there's two types of creators right now, especially with how relevant this shift is, because I feel like it's taken place in probably like the last 5 to 6 years, right? You have basically two types of creators. You have the creators who immediately adopted the new form and, have continued to elevate and develop their work inside of this new short form content, where it's like less produced and mostly shot on an iPhone. And then you have your creators who are, still kind of attached to the highly produced content where that's all that they put out, and that's all that they create. And I definitely think that there's a market for that, but we'll dive into that deeper. But I guess my question to you is, which one are you? Are you being a little bit resistant to this shift and, kind of just sticking to your guns and what you've always done? Or are you kind of diving into this head first? And I will admit, I'm definitely more aligned with someone who is sticking to their guns and like, favoring the high quality, highly produced content. I think as artists, it's really hard to let go of that. But we are running businesses and we need to understand how social media works, how it functions, why things work, why things don't work. Okay. So why recap videos used to work? There was a time when every artist, label, and brand wanted a recap video, and here's why it worked back then. Traditional recaps used to be the move because they showed off the wow factor, like we talked about. And we talked about all the different types of recaps, right? Shows, parties, tours. This was like, every artist and brand in the music industry, not even that long ago, like 99% of the content that did really well was, some form of a recap, or it was some type of content that was captured at an event. And at this point in social media, the landscape it wasn't about like what was real. It was about looking as huge and expensive and as absolutely insane as you could. But like we talked about, viewers' attention spans and their willingness to watch something like that has drastically decreased for a lot of reasons. Okay. So that's why all of those things worked. And we've been hinting at this shift and why it happened. So the thing is like when certain content starts to do really well, it's usually replacing another type of content, or like it's the classic like trend thing, like cycle. It's like one trend replaces another. But there is times when kind of the entire landscape shifts, and therefore certain types of content bubble to the surface, and So recaps aren't dead, but the purpose they serve has completely changed. Okay, so it's not like recap videos are being replaced, but it's the purpose that they used to serve is now shifting because other content has now, taken that limelight. So today, content that gets seen is faster, simpler, and often shot on a phone. Recaps don't generate the views that they used to, but they still matter specifically for brand building and community connection. Okay, so if you want a recap to actually perform now, there's an entirely new set of rules. And yes, of course, like every recap video that you do, obviously you want it to be like super like high quality and crazy and wild and keep people's attention and all that good stuff. But it is more important now than ever, if you are creating a recap, that one, you're telling a story, and two, you're telling that story in a very creative way. I don't see there being any other way to create a recap video now that would actually get seen, whether that's by an existing fan base or a new audience. No matter what, I think like it's no more. It's recap videos now don't perform a lot of the times because they don't have a story. There's no reason to continue to keep watching because it's basically like it's like just a reel of a bunch of cool things, like a bunch of cool effects and like cool things. Like there's no substance. There's no like, but what happens next? Like there's never that question in your head. It's just like I already know what happens next. It's just repetitive cool effects, So I think that's like the biggest takeaway kind of from this section is just if you're going to continue to make these and when you continue to make these, you got to keep that in the back of your head. Okay. So it's no longer about showing off. It's about connection and identity of the brand and like the direction that artist or brand wants to take through the content. Okay. Because the way we need to think about content, and when I say content too, it's a very broad statement, that can include like cinematic, like very film-esque pieces, but it can also just include like phone footage as well. But when I say that, I'm just trying to explain that your content that you put out, whether this is a personal brand, whether you're an artist, whether you're a brand trying to build out an identity, it's all about creating a world. And every piece of content that you put out builds another piece of that world. So when we put out a recap video that tells a story that is specific to an artist, let's say, we are now making that story that is inside of this recap video, that is now a part of the artist's world. And fans will gravitate towards that and connect with that story and accept this new puzzle piece of the world, into the community, and I think like it's a really, I know I'm kind of rambling here, but like that is such an important piece of the puzzle when it comes to like building a brand or an identity or having a connection with your community, is this like looking at it as a world that your community is going to live in. Okay. Now, speaking of brands and artists and what's the purpose of making the content, right? Like, yes, okay, it's to build out the world, like I just said, but a lot of people will argue that there's more to it, and I would agree. Brands are still chasing the wrong metrics, however. So, if we're going to talk in like business terms and you want like KPIs and, you want like specific metrics that are connected to the content that you put out, that's what we're talking about here. So most artists and brands are measuring success with the wrong numbers. And this is just my opinion, but for many, the only goal is views and likes, which makes them think that they need a flashy recap. And, a couple of years ago or a few years ago now, that they would be correct in that thinking. But there's a lot of factors that go into this now, more so now than there was previously as well. So for example, to make that recap video, a lot of times you would have to have anywhere from 3 to 5 people working during the event, all to put out and create a single asset, one post. Now, if that's done correctly, obviously, then your ROI, again, another more business terms, but like then the ROI in the brand's mind, if it's done correctly, it will pay off. But if we're, considering all the things that are going on now in social media, those same 5 people could have cranked out 25 TikToks or Reels in the same amount of time and probably garnered, dare I say, 10x the views, And so if you are an artist or a brand that is like purely focused on numbers, and, just getting seen, then that would make a lot more sense than hiring those 5 people to make one video. So just some food for thought here. Clients need help understanding that high effort content doesn't always mean high return content. So again, like we just talked about, we got 5 people working on one versus 5 people working on 25 different videos. There's obviously a stark difference in what that will do for your brand. So instead, if you are an artist or brand, I would be thinking about these things. What is the purpose of all the different types of content that can be made from your event or whatever it is? How much will that cost? How much time will it take to create those desired assets? And what can we realistically accomplish with the resources that we have? So, and this is like me speaking as if, I'm on the artist or brand's team, and I'm just trying to figure out, what is the best course of action in order to meet our goals. And like we talked about, your goals could be just to build out your world for the existing community, or it could be just purely we need views, we need likes, we need shares, etc. So at this point, it's about intention and leaving the ego at the door. And I even personally struggle with this. Is like the ego wants you to like just keep doing the things that you've always done, and you're really good at those things, and trying new things, like threatens that ego in a way. And that's something we just have to like start to let go of if we're going to start to grow and adapt to this new climate that we're in. Okay. So as a freelance videographer, or as, a company owner, or, someone at an agency, how do we help our clients embrace this new era? Most artists and brands still think that TikTok is corny. So how do we help them get over that? A lot of clients are afraid of social content because they think it looks silly, or they think they will look silly by posting stuff like that. But this new content style is not going away. It is the new standard. It's here to stay, guys. Like, whether you hate TikTok, you love TikTok, hate Reels, love Reels, they're gonna be here indefinitely. They're not gonna go away, and new iterations of those things are gonna continue to come out. And it's important for us because, again, I know that a lot of us look at ourselves as artists, but we're also running a business. And to deny or disregard all of these changes is literally, you're setting yourself up for failure. There is no way that you can do the same thing, exact thing, and I would love someone prove me wrong, but I don't believe that you can do the exact same thing for 30 plus years and grow your business and grow as an artist in the way that you want by just like staying the same and doing the same things. I don't know. That's just my opinion. But the job now is to help brands and artists create social content that still looks cool in quotes, and on brand. And I think that that second part is more important. It's on brand. How do we make, so like, let's say the brand or artist's main concern is to look cool. Well, technically that would be a part of their brand is to look cool, right? So that is our job as creatives now, is to help problem solve how to create this new type of content, but still, aid in the artist or brand's goal of, staying on brand. So I believe that this is a creative problem solving exercise that should take place once the client has committed to trying these new strategies. Okay. So it's literally sitting down, brainstorming all of the different ways that we can adapt this new style of content and this new era of content to that current brand or artist and begin to make waves in that department. I just think it's so important to, like, there are solutions. There are ways to do it in which that it is not corny and that the brand or artist doesn't look ridiculous. And shout out honestly to Greg Korn from Respective Collective and Joe Larkin, J Lark from Curza. I hit them up and a couple others about just like about this topic, and they both just brought up such great points. And for example, like this helping the client, adapt to this new type of content and, come to the realization that it's not corny. That was one of Greg's like best points in my opinion. And then this next one is, the reality is you can reach more people for less money than ever before. So that's the power of content in this new era. And Joe was talking about how, previously, a $200,000 music video would be like the main source of content. But now anyone can just grab their phone and record and get millions and millions of views by just doing that. So, it really, everyone now is empowered with the ability to reach a lot of people and with the correct intention, if you're approaching it like that. And so that doesn't necessarily mean that like Joe said, that like he mentioned, it doesn't mean that music videos, are dead or that type of content is not useful. I think if I'm going to leave you guys with anything, if you take anything away from this, it's that each type of content that you create, there's different verticals, there's different types. So like, there's identity building, right? Like it's brand specific. Then we have, maybe like community specific, where it's like, this is how the brand or the artist interacts with the customers or the fans. Like that's another type of content. Another type of content could be personality based. So if the artist is front facing, or if the brand or company has a spokesperson that is front facing, then there's, a column of content that would go under personality, where it's like, what are some fun ways to display who that person is, and why their association with that brand, or for example, why an artist's personality is so closely connected with their music and why people like them. So all of these types of content, and sorry if I'm being repetitive, have different purposes. And the traditional recap video, its purpose has just now shifted. That's all. That's all. And so we just can't rely on the recap video to get us new followers and millions of views anymore. That's not the purpose of it. The purpose is to reinforce the connection with the customers and the fans, the existing customers and fan base. That's what that type of content is primarily for now, because when a customer or fan sees a new piece of content from that company or artist, they're already committed. So they're so much more likely to take the time out of their day to sit down and watch it, because they're genuinely interested in the nitty-gritty details, of this world that we're building. And so I think that's like the biggest takeaway. That's like essentially everything I've been talking about could have been just summed up in that, that little phrase there. But hopefully that kind of paints a more clear picture as to, why I, labeled this episode, our traditional recaps, videos dead and stuff like that. Because, kind of are, but kind of not, so it's funny. It's nuanced. There's no black and white answer. Okay. And all right, this brings us to the hot take segment. Ooh, yeah, this is a good one. If you're still charging by the hour, I believe you're robbing yourself of money and career growth. Now, honestly, I don't know how many of you are charging by the hour, but I know a lot of people that start out, just kind of default to charging by the hour. And I know, I think I used to listen to a lot of graphic designer podcasts, and they would also talk about how in the beginning they would charge by the hour of, like, creating a poster or, some sort of brand identity kit and stuff like that. And I think eventually too, I want to have like an entire episode on this topic. But we'll say that for another time. But here's my argument for why you should never, ever, 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 ever charge by the hour. The time you spend on an asset does not equal its value to the client. So for example, if I've been working on, my technical skills and all of that stuff for years and years, it's likely that I can put out way higher quality content in half the time of someone who's just starting, right? And that's just an example. Just because I can create high quality content in less time doesn't mean that you should get penalized, because if you're charging by the hour, then technically you would get penalized by being really good at what you do and able to do it really fast. So it doesn't make any sense. And then that's only half the equation. The other equation is what the client's perceived value of your work is. And I say perceived because, for example, we were talking about earlier, the purpose of all this content. If you're creating an asset that for a client, that client more than likely has a core purpose for that asset. Like that asset is going to perform or do something for that client. And the value of that asset to the client is solely based on what it can do for them. So if they believe that the asset could bring in an increase in, let's just say, 15% in sales, then, they're probably willing to spend 8% of whatever they believe that increase is, so that, then they have a little bit of margin on top after paying for the asset, but they know that they're going to get that ROI and that increase. So that's like my best way, like my best effort at explaining why charging by the hour makes zero sense, especially in the creative field. And then I also believe that like flat rates will make you extra money when the creative comes easy. So, you're good at what you do and you're really fast, so your flat rate, is supposed to cover in case something goes wrong. And so usually you'll make a little bit of extra money on top, but working into that flat rate in case something goes wrong or in case, revisions go an extended period of time, it will save your ass because had you failed to account for certain variables, you could have lost a lot of money. And I think that's honestly the case a lot of times is we're charging based on how much effort we think we have to put into it, but then we don't we don't account into the price if things go wrong or if the client starts asking for extra things. And so that's why I think that we should always, be bumping it a little bit to account for the unknown, especially as freelancers, because we're dealing with lots of different clientele. So it's important to just like have our bases covered. And clients also want to know definitively how much they're going to spend on a project. So if you're charging by the hour, you could literally just tell them indefinitely that you're still working on it, and charge them so much more money than they wanted to spend. And that could create a bit of a salty relationship. But yeah, so that's my take on that. Do not ever charge by the hour, but I would love to hear your thoughts. I'm pretty bullish on this, but let me know if that's cap or not. So moving on to the listener Q&A. I've definitely been experimenting with this Q&A section. I think I'm just going to keep it to kind of one core question that I know I can expand on, because as we talked about, this is all about depth, not width. So I want to be able to go deep on these things so that when you guys leave, you don't have any more questions. And if you do, it's just because you want to learn and grow and continue the conversation into the real world. So this one is from Hellwolf Films. They ask, are people's attention spans too fried for a 1 minute plus recap? Oh, man. Okay, so first off, obviously on theme with this episode, and I will definitely rely on my buddy Joe, who I talked about, who, I had a conversation with about this topic, and he absolutely believes that as well, is that like people's attention spans are definitely significantly decreased. And yeah, like you said, too fried for a 1 minute plus recap. I feel like let's just say even 2022, a 1 minute recap, would kind of pop off. But I would say now I wouldn't make it longer than 30 seconds. Like, unless, like we talked about earlier as well, dang, everything's connecting, everything is just coming together. So I wouldn't make a 1 minute recap unless you're able to like really drive home a story and tell that story in a creative way that just keeps people hooked and like constantly wondering what is next. And I feel like that's so much easier said than done. Like storytelling by far is one of the most valuable skill sets you can have, but it is also the most difficult. So yeah, in short, I would say yes, because of just the way that viewers consume content now. It's vastly different. They're not interested in that super deep stuff unless they're an already committed like member of your community. So hopefully that kind of explains like why a little bit too, because like, yeah, I don't know. I wonder, this is a great question actually that I have is, and maybe one of you out there has like some sort of explanation, but it's like, I wonder if before the TikTok and Reel era, like why did 1 minute recaps do so well? Like longer form content do so well, even if a stranger is watching it. And maybe it's because most of the time a stranger wouldn't watch it because the algorithm wasn't putting it into new audiences, because it was like when you followed someone, your feed would be all the people that you follow. right? So there wasn't any like suggested posts, and that was what the explore feed was for, is to like explore and discover new people. So maybe the reason that these recaps did so well in the past is because it was all people that were already a part of that community or already familiar with that account and the type of stuff that it would post. So I don't know. If anyone has more information on that, I would love to like have a conversation and just like see like hear your thoughts. Cause yeah, super fascinating. Anyone in marketing, anyone in social media that's a guru, would love to have the conversation. All right, next week we're diving into a wildly controversial topic. Okay, are you ready for this? Should you ever work for free? Oof. My thoughts are mixed. I'll probably trigger a lot of you too, but nonetheless, this is a very important discussion. If you've ever worked for free, you're just getting started, or you're unsure of when to work for free or not, this episode is going to be for you. Yeah, super juicy. Man, I've been thinking about putting out a video on this topic since 2020, at least, if not earlier. Yeah, I've kind of just avoided it because it is definitely triggering. A lot of people will say that you should work for free, and a lot of people say that you shouldn't. So find out which camp I'm in next episode. But this has been the Wrk To Create podcast. If you found what you heard today valuable, even just a little, please consider liking, subscribing, following, commenting, and even leaving a review on your podcast app of choice. It helps this podcast get discovered, and hopefully, as a result, we can help more people. Your support means the world. Wrk To Create, Wrk To Inspire, and I'll see you next time.
I'm on a roll like a jalopy with the brakes cut. I done came up back then I had